and we're standing there in our towels, wrapped around ourselves coming out of the shower, and we're not even there. I was 23 years old when I came out and did the first race. A little background on that. The biplane class has been with the Reno National Championship air races for many, many years. But in the 70s, we had a couple of racing biplanes, Sorceress and Sundancer, and there was another one, extremely fast biplane racers. They ran away from everybody else. They were considering, I think they did for a while, split the course up into a racing biplane and then just a biplane class. They split the class. Well, with only 3 airplanes dominating, less and less people wanted to compete because the guys, they didn't want to. Those were custom-built racing airplanes, and the rest of us were running stock aircraft. So the class began to die, and so the call went out. All of us that had pit specials and just fun biplanes, they called us all up and said, "Come on up to Reno and save the class for racing." It was $500 to enter, but the racing purse, once you split it up among everybody, you could come up and you could come in last place, which was where I nearly was most of the time, with a little 150 horse pits, still paid like $2,000. So as a 23-year-old kid to walk away with $1,500, I was in tall cotton. So I just set up my little sleeping bag and my little tent and then live off the fat of the land around here, learning where all the free stuff is, airline pilot lead-in training, and just came up here and had an absolute blast racing biplanes at Reno. One thing you learn in air racing and air shows in general is the schedule always changes. And of course, back in those days, no cell phones, no texts or anything else. So me and my buddy Mike O'Brien, the other biplane racer, we both got twin pit specials, red and white, look identical. We're in there doing our morning shower at the church here, and they decided to launch the biplane race. And then we hear Danny Glisham and the whole gang start announcing the race, and they're announcing our names. And one of the biplanes is flying really low, and they're yelling at him, "Brownie, Brownie, get out of the bushes, man, bring it up, bring it up." And we're standing there in our towels, wrapped around ourselves coming out of the shower, and we're not even there. We didn't even get the word. That's not us at all. But they announced it all the way through with our names, and I got like third place when I really should have been in dead-ass last place on that race. So the schedule always changes. Stay abreast of the schedule. Back in the 80s, the early days of air racing, a few years ago, we didn't have this thing called PRS, or Pylon Racing School. So you could just show up on the weekend of air racing, and was frequently the case, folks would just show up not the best prepared, not the best either on the maintenance or on the current qualifications, which includes a lot of good formation flying skills, because air racing is basically formation flying with a bunch of different airplanes that don't want to fly formation with you. And that began to get a little sketchy, and that's what kind of ran me off from air racing after 4 or 5 seasons. A couple of the typical things that would happen. One, especially with the biplanes, now this doesn't have anything to do with, this is just the nature of the beast. With the biplanes, you got 4 wings or 4 wingtip vortices as compared to a monoplane. So the air gets very, very choppy out there on the biplane course. Finding clean air is a challenge, especially in conditions like this morning when the air is very still. If you're slow like me, you're getting in that rough air. And so when you're rounding the pylons at pylon height, which is only 50 to 75 feet off the ground, you get in that wake turbulence, it'll roll you right up. And you're just looking at the sagebrush at exactly the point where you're gonna hit, and you got to use that rudder to get out of the wake turbulence of the aircraft ahead of you, and then find some clean air and resume the race. The other challenge with biplane racing is locating the other aircraft. You got 4 wings. The top wing is blocking a lot of your forward view, and the bottom wing is blocking the view of the aircraft that's trying to pass you on the outside. You have to pass high and on the outside. It's hard to see the pylons ahead of you. You got to memorize the track, and what I learned out here air racing in the middle of the day like this, the sun and the shadows. So I would use the shadows on the ground to help verify other aircraft that are around me. because at the time we didn't have radios, we didn't even have starters, we'd prop start the aircraft. But then the other pilot qualification thing that would get to you after a while that kind of, again, ran me off was guys getting lost out there on the race course. And once you are off the course, you're done. There's no re-entering the course. And some of these weekend warriors would show up not really current and qualified and would get a little disoriented on the course out there with the blindness of the pit special, and pretty soon they're just cutting. One guy just cut completely across the middle of the course, right in half, and he did that multiple times, and then he's coming right back at you, 90 degrees, and then belly up to you, and you're just thinking, no. Here he comes again. And so out of that, and out of critiquing that enough, the Air Race Association has developed a pylon racing school requirement that if you haven't raced, I believe, within the last 2 years, or if you're a rookie, you have to attend pylon racing school, which is held in June. And there they take the time to really get you comfortable and qualified for rounding the pylons, your flying formation, doing precision takeoffs, and monitoring your ability to maintain directional control of the aircraft, because you're doing race horse starts, wingtip to wingtip, on the runway and taxiway as you blast off for the start of the race. So Pylon Racing School was a great development of additional training needed and required for the Reno National Championship Air Races, which has made things much, much safer.